This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with Stephanie Meehan of Priory Hall fame, one of the many victims of the economic crash who happened to find themselves with a huge mortgage in a property that was so badly built it had to be vacated. Under the pressure of the situation with 2 young children and KBC Bank relentlessly breathing down their backs, her husband Fiachra sadly passed by suicide on the 15th of July 2013. Stephanie shares her brave story, how she and her kids have coped, her successful campaigning, and how she has managed to rebuild her life since then. Let's hear from Stephanie. Stephanie Meehan, a big, huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you keeping?
I am very well, and thank you so much for having me.
And you're a woman with a big story. And what I'm most interested about that big story that you have is the life lessons that, if it's okay, that you might share with some of the listeners, because life isn't always plain sailing, and sometimes you get a very horrible deck of cards, and it's only when they're presented to you that you know who you are and how you can wrestle with everything. So some people probably think, I know that name from somewhere, and they're probably thinking, yeah, there's a reason Greg has them on his podcast. I don't want to give away all of that right now, though, so we might let some of them figure it out. The question that I ask all of my guests is, who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Okay, so my name is Stephanie Meehan. I am from a small little village in North County Dublin called Baldoyle. My parents are Bernadette and Michael. They both are also Dubs, and they moved out from Marino, another area in North County Dublin, many moons ago.
They emigrated.
They emigrated. And even then, as they say now, Baldoyle from Marino, they thought was out in the sticks. They couldn't believe that they were going out to the countryside. But we did a wonderful upbringing. I have 2 older sisters, Ciara and Lindsay, and I have a younger brother, Conleth. And we are super close. We're a very, very tight family. My mum is a fitness instructor, and still to this day, at the grand old age of 76, she was 76 only 2 weeks ago, is still teaching.
I'm thinking Jane Fonda now.
Oh, listen, she's better than Jane Fonda. she's a super glam nan, and she's an incredible person. I've got so much admiration for my mum. She sets a goal and she absolutely goes for it. And my dad was very much involved in currying. So he's a courier most of his life, but he did start off in buttercrust breads. So we had a wonderful life, and a life with lots of lovely cakes from buttercrust, as I'm sure you can imagine, and breads. And we were very popular in the neighbourhood due to my dad coming home in the truck every day with trays of coffee slices and custard slices. So I had a super upbringing, really happy, a very happy home. My mum and dad are extremely outgoing. They're very, very, very well loved and respected in the area as well. And yeah, I can't fault my childhood.
And tell me, what were the conversations around the kitchen table when you were growing up?
Usually arguments about stealing somebody's pair of jeans or taking my sister's makeup or something like that. Now and no, there was happy. It was a happy home. There was a lot of music. We were all into music. We don't play any instruments or like that, but there was always music on. My mum and dad loved a good party. There was times when on a Saturday night, on a couple of occurrences, that you'd go down the stairs and there might be 30 people sitting in the living room and the kitchen, and my mum would be whipping up a curry for them. And it was just always, it was a very, very fun, happy house.
And tell me, what was the most played album in the house?
Probably Cliff Richard. My mom loved Cliff Richard. And look, they loved all the usuals as well, the Beatles. And my dad absolutely loved the Righteous Brothers and Buddy Holly. I knew, like even growing up, I knew all the Buddy Holly songs, which was very funny for me, being obviously not of my dad's generation, knowing all the Buddy Holly hits. So yeah, we had a great home.
And the young Stephanie, what was bouncing around in your head? What were your dreams?
I always wanted to be involved in music. I used to sing. I still do the odd time. I had it in my head that I was going to either be an actress or a singer, but I think that's probably every young girl's dream. And I was fairly good in school. I enjoyed school. In primary school, I certainly did. And then secondary school, I was a bit of a wayward teen now. And I say my mom and dad, if they were sitting here, they say that I drove them absolutely bananas. I kind of decided, that I got a part-time job when I was 15. I was 15. I was in third year in school, and I got a part-time job down in a local bar. And I just thought, oh my God, this is brilliant. I'm out at night time. I can't be called in, and I just loved that scene. So that kind of got me started on my life in hospitality.
Fantastic. And there's a great old buzz doing bar work. I did bar work as well for a few summers, and it's good fun.
There's great camaraderie as well, and the banter, and I think it really sets you up for future life. It gives you a lot of self-confidence. You're talking to all different age groups, and Oisin now, my 16-year-old, has just started off in it, and even the difference in him is unreal. So I think it's very hard work, but I would never have any fear of hard work. I think the harder the work, the better. I'd always dig in, and and no problem getting my hands dirty.
It's funny actually, even some of the kind of big business types that I chat to, and you ask a lot of people about their first jobs and what role they had that they learned the most, and so many people talk about the times when they were catering and learning about customer service. And I think in particular, anyone who would have gone to the States, where your salary was pretty much your tip. So you had to work that fairly well.
You had to bust your,
Exactly.
I'm in fourth year in school. I did transition year in secondary school, and it just wasn't for me. School wasn't for me. Now I did my Leaving Cert. I did a pretty average Leaving Cert, but I didn't put in any effort, to be quite honest. But in fourth year in school, my mom said I didn't want to go in. And my mom said, "Oh, do you know what?" She said, her friend was the general manager in the local hotel, in the Marine Hotel in Sutton, and I remember my mom went down to Maura Hames and said, "Can you give Stephanie a job? The worst job that you have. I want her to turn around and want to go back to school to get a better education." And it completely backfired. I was scrubbing around the pool. I was doing the worst jobs ever, but I absolutely loved it. I loved it, and so it definitely backfired for my mom.
So was it hospitality from there on in with you, or what was your path?
Yeah, no, it was hospitality from there on in, and I did hotel and catering, and I started off in a couple of restaurants out in Howth, which I would still frequent, and it was lovely to start out there and heading out to Howth, which is such a wonderful community, and everybody knows everyone. We were all welcomed. We were blow-ins, but only from two stops down the line, kind of thing. I started waitressing first, and then in a couple of restaurants, I worked my way up to being a manager. So I've managed 3 restaurants out in Howth in my career, and 3 very successful restaurants, and I'm very proud of them.
There was a time, I'm an accountant for my sins. And
Okay.
so one of our accounts was in Coolock. It was a company that basically imported a lot of the kind of high-end perfumes and everything else.
Okay.
It was called Burke Egan. So we used to stay in a kind of bed and breakfast in Howth. But did they have a restaurant downstairs? It was just behind, or the bus depot was just behind it. I'm not sure if there's still a restaurant around there. There's a depot on the Howth Road there.
Yeah. Okay. So on the Howth Road. So it is. Yeah, I know it's called I think it's called the Bram Stoker now. I think.
Yeah.
I know exactly where you're talking about. It's right across from the seafront.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's more kind of Clontarf.
Oh yeah. Sorry, more Clontarf, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we used to love staying there. The food used to be really, really good, and I think corn on the cob with butter on it. That was always the starter that I would order, and then we'd get our drive over to Coolock and back there anyway. It was a lovely spot to
Yeah, it is.
be
It's
in.
absolutely gorgeous. And now at the waterfront there as well, it's stunning.
Yeah. So Stephanie settling down, working hard, and then life and everything, and trying to get a house and everything. Could you tell me that story?
Yeah, of course. Actually, it was funny that it was when I was working in a bar called the Waterside out in Howth that I met Fiachra. So he was working there as a barman. So, God, I was 18. I was 18 when I first met him. And he was always the life and soul of the party. He was absolutely hilarious. He had just such a great sense of humour, and there was a lot of fun about him. So we first met then, and we became friends first. We were really, really good friends, you know, and he'd be kind of my guy friend and I'd be his girlfriend, but we weren't together at that time. And then eventually, I think he had kind of met another girl, and I started to have these very odd feelings. And I said, I'm not too happy about this, you know. And then I had moved on to somebody else, and he said he felt the same. So we ended up eventually together, and it was great. We had a lovely life, we had great fun. We rented a beautiful apartment up in Howth as well, and life was really, really good. We were in our 20s, early 20s. We were having the time of our lives, really.
Was that a hard transition from friend to lover?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I think it was kind of a natural thing, you know, because we were such good friends. And yeah, of course, it was a bit strange. And then people didn't realize that we were together because we were always together anyway. But yeah, no, he was such a good guy, and I'm very lucky to have had him in my life.
Yeah, and the house hunting and when that would have happened, because I think it's important that we paint the picture of when it actually happened, because this was Celtic Tiger, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. So I fell pregnant with Oisín, and so that was in 2005. So we said, "Oh God, listen, reality has struck. We better stop this now. No time for partying. We've got a little man in here to look after," and we decided, look, we better start saving for a deposit. And we started looking around, and everywhere was kind of out of our price range. But look, we said we'd tip away at it for another year or two. And then eventually we saw the apartment complex in Donamead, which is literally a 10 minutes walk from my family home. And I'm so familiar with the area. My God, we played in the fields as kids. We played on the farms and that. And this looked absolutely perfect for us and was in our price range. So we pulled money from my parents as well. We knew, look, this is it. This is our chance. We had to battle quite hard actually to get a mortgage. And fortunately, luckily enough, we had a mortgage broker friend who pulled every string for us. And eventually we were approved for a mortgage for Priory Hall.
How much was the loan? How much was the mortgage?
296,000.
Yeah, God almighty.
Which wasn't a whole lot back then, Greg. During that period, Priory Hall we bought from the plans, so which a lot of people did at the time. But 296, we thought we were getting an absolute bargain.
Yeah. How big was the apartment?
It was a duplex. It was 1,100 square foot.
Okay, so that was a good starter home, really.
Yeah.
You'd consider it, and obviously fantastic brochure and everything looked brilliant and everything.
Was very, very glossy, and you know it had everything. It had all the mod cons. It looked absolutely gorgeous.
Do you remember the day you stepped in there for the first time and got the keys?
Yeah, I do actually. So we got the keys and went over, and then we realised even on receiving the keys that our block wasn't even nearly completed. So we went back to the apartment that we were renting. We were renting in the complex right beside. So where Priory Hall is, right adjacent, there is another complex. And we were renting there from a friend of ours on a very low rent. We were absolutely blessed at the time. And he knew that we were moving in. And so he just asked us to cover the costs. So we were so grateful to him. And we were still able to keep putting money away for furnishings and that. So on the day we received the keys, we were absolutely over the moon, until we realised that not everything was as it should have been.
Yeah. Did that penny take a while to drop,
Stephanie? Absolutely. And, you know, we were so naive. And that, looking back, I can't believe how naive we were. But I think there was a lot of naivety, but there's also a lot of hope. And we were just so positive and so excited that we were getting our foot on the ladder. And we knew it was only ever going to be a starter home. Well, we thought it was only ever going to be a starter home. But we kind of thought this is it. So we kind of overlooked all of the glaringly obvious problems.
You use the word naive, but in all fairness, how old were you?
Oh, I wasn't that young. I was 28 at the time.
Yeah, okay. So. And how many times did we buy houses in our lives?
No, it was our first. It was our first. And we were,
it's not a regular occurrence for people.
Yeah.
And, you might use the word naive, but where are we going to get all this experience from unless you've got someone in your family that's used to construction or part of the trade and then give you great advice and go and look at things? Because like everything else, those mortgages don't get handed out theoretically.
Absolutely.
Without engineers' reports and all that business.
We trusted everyone. We trusted everyone. And, we thought we'd never heard of anything like this before. So we just thought everything's going to be fine. We've got our key to the door. We've got Oisín. We can get our rooms all decorated. We can get everything done. And, and we made it as homely as possible for us as soon as we closed the door. And it was gorgeous. It was absolutely lovely. And I always say that now that it's been rebuilt, I'd be almost envious of the people who are going to get that apartment because it's absolutely stunning. It really is. The views are second to none. They're from the top floor, you can see on the balcony, you can see all the way from Dunleary all the way around to Portmarnock to the bay. And it on paper and in the glossy, as we were discussing, it looked like the most beautiful place.
Yeah, except it was just a cowboy build effectively. Yeah. And there you go. Suck it up. You're stuck with this now, sunshine.
Yeah. That was the way things were going anyway.
How did the whole thing end up unraveling for you?
We knew Fiachra had background in it. He was into plumbing. He was a plumber, and he was very, very handy. So we were lucky in a way that when we went in, he was kind of using God everywhere. There was filler everywhere. I just remember that Tech 7. There was Tech 7. I like expanding foam. And I'd never even seen any of these items before. Now I'm a wizard at them all. But he was able to fix things when we went in. There was loose wires. He was able to fix all of them, and so he kind of patched things up as best we could. And to be quite honest with you, Greg, as soon as you closed the door in our apartment, it was a world away. It was a world away from the outdoor, from the hall area, from the communal areas. It really was a world away from it. We had it absolutely magnificent. And unfortunately, the first winter was when the problems in our apartment started to unfold, with water ingress and blowing a gale through the windows. The seals were kind of gone on them, and just very, very shoddy workmanship, even to an untrained eye like mine.
Who could you go to about that stuff? Was there any going to a builder? Were they all long gone, or how did that work out?
So at the time, there was still a foreman was still on site, and he was nice, and he came up and he said, "Oh, we'll have the lads over to you." But listen, that became a daily thing. You'd be going down to him and saying, "Look, is anybody going to come up? I've got a small child. There's rain coming in his window. We can start even to see the damp that's creeping up the walls. Floorboards were starting to raise from the water ingress." And of course, they were just there to kind of keep us at an arm's length and away from Coalport. Now, who was the builder, I did write to them on many occasions by email and then by letter, which I dropped in so that I knew that they got it. And we had very little response. We'd have a girl who would ring us and just, try and fob us off.
Yeah. And the conversations with the neighbours, I presume you obviously weren't the only one having issues.
Yeah, of course. At first, we were all very much new neighbours, and none of us had known anybody. I didn't know my next door neighbour. We went in and introduced ourselves, and I think we were all kind of in the same boat. We were kind of hoping that these would be all general teething problems, and that they'd be patched up and fixed, and that in a couple of months we'd be kind of looking back at it as a distant memory.
Was there a point when you realised this is beyond teething problems? We're in big shit here.
Absolutely. And I definitely remember the day I had started to get this feeling, as did Fiachra, that things definitely were not right. It was in 2009. And I know it's quite well documented now, but I'll go through it again. So we could actually see Dublin City Council moving their tenants out. There was a number of Dublin City Council tenants living, and also in my block. And we could see them moving out, and all of their furniture being moved out. They were being assisted by Dublin City Council workers. And we're kind of going, what's going on here, And it was kind of all a bit hush-hush. You see them moving on. And my neighbour told us that they were being told that they had to go to alternative accommodation because Dublin City Council were increasingly concerned about the state of play in the complex. About, and they didn't say, my neighbour didn't say it was fire safety issues or anything like that. But to be quite honest with you, Greg, I think she was as much in the dark as we were. And she was just doing as she was told. You know, you're going to have to move out. It's only going to be temporary. So that was as far back as 2009. So at that stage, we'd only moved in, I think, less than a year.
And then, of course, the wheels fell off the economy. Yeah. And you had the banks then closing in on everyone, and you had properties that weren't, I'm just thinking ourselves, even where we're living, you know, there's houses that were sold in our little block. And despite it being so many years on, I think the prices still haven't recovered to the prices that they paid for things. So everything then was suddenly worth shillings compared to the prices you had paid for them. Yeah, so you had that double pressure.
Everybody and anyone was in negative equity, and that's all that was been battered around for so long. But the prices, I don't think, anyway, apartments, certainly for apartment living, will never ever be matched to what they were during those years.
Yeah. And at that time, you know, you were saying Fiachra was in the construction sector. That got a clobbering. So was the income clobbered coming into the house?
Not necessarily. No, my job was still the same. And Fiachra at the time had gone to work for a recruitment agency. So he was with a company called Manpower. I'm not sure whether
Yeah.
He was really much. He was very valued at the time. So no, we financially our circumstances didn't change at all, and we were very much still in the position to afford to pay our mortgage. So that was never really an issue for Fiachra and I, and we did continue to pay it until we were advised to stop paying it. And even then it felt like it was the wrong thing to do, because we knew everybody hears about credit rating, and you know, we were obviously in not thinking, not being that forward thinking. We were thinking about our credit rating at the time, and that if we wanted to buy another property, that we would be in serious trouble, you know, and we'd be back to square one again. And for us, as I said, to achieve the mortgage in the first place was an absolute minefield. So we had to produce every document and documentation for my parents, everything. So for us to have to go through that again, and with a bad credit score, it wasn't even up for debate. We weren't in that. We didn't want to put ourselves into that position.
Yeah, but stopping the mortgage payments was all about trying to solve this problem somehow.
Yes. Yeah. Most definitely. Yeah. We had lots of advisors at that stage, because so many people, thankfully, people who I'd never met before and who were so generous with their time. And a lot of people, everybody that I know did all their work pro bono. And we were surrounded by a really, really good team. And that's when we started to listen and say, okay, this isn't going to be resolved overnight. Stop paying your mortgage.
And were your neighbours taking the same course of action?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's incredible, actually, when you're faced with adversity, how many great people come together. And what happens when great people come together, you get a result. And we had a super residents committee. I was involved with it from the get-go, to be quite honest, because the meetings were at nighttime. And with my industry, is hospitality, which is nighttime. So I very rarely made it to any of the meetings. But we had a super bunch of people, and some fabulous local councillors as well who rode in.
So suddenly the banks then obviously starting to put a lot of pressure on. And at that time, painting the picture for anyone, like I know myself, like we're working for ourselves. You couldn't walk down the street without talking to anyone and how are things going? And you daren't even ask the question. They're like, you have no idea how bad it is.
Yeah.
It was a tough time. I remember even with us trying to meet revenue payments like VAT and POE and everything. And there came days, you know, you're on a Friday, you're trying to pay the wages to the team. And then the VAT man is shouting and the POA. And you're kind of like, well, do I feed my team today? Or do I delay the payment to revenue by a week or two or whatever? And we did that on occasion. And sometimes you may have had the money, but you just needed to keep a cushion. You know that from running the restaurant and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I remember revenue chasing us and trying to charge interest for late payments. And I remember having a conversation with someone in revenue saying, listen, I'm not paying you late deliberately. I'm paying you late because I don't have the money. And I'm trying to pay the team. And all you're doing now with the interest charge is you're making someone who couldn't pay on time, you're making that job even more difficult. And I remember being on, and this woman says, well, this conversation is going around in circles. And I said, well, it's not going around in circles for me. You know, the money you're talking about now is stuff that we have to live on.
Yeah.
So it's very much an important thing to me. And that was just VAT and revenue. And I remember Dee, my other half, grabbing the phone one day and actually saying to the person in revenue that my other half is under severe pressure and your threatening letters aren't very good for his mindset. So, you know, it's fine firing this stuff out in sheriff's notices and all that kind of thing, but you should be careful. And to be fair, whoever she was talking to actually responded to that and said, I'll take a note in the file and we'll it's like we'll back off for a few months and we'll accept that your circumstances. So that was a minor thing, but your conversation was that multiplied by a million, I'm guessing. So what was that like for you, and who was putting the pressure on?
So it started off that when we couldn't even approach our bank about our situation. They absolutely slammed the door, closed on us. They were not interested. They also, I think there was only us and one other family that were with KBC at the time, and they weren't interested. Now, I know other residents did have a better luck with their banks because we a group with them with AIB, Bank of Ireland, Ulster Bank. They kind of had the bulk of residents' mortgages. So for us, there were no answers. There were no answers at the time. We went in to try and meet them. They had us fill out moratorium after moratorium. And Greg, I'm sure you might know what a moratorium is. It's you're going through every little item of spending, you know, down to nappies for the children, school fees, everything. You have to itemize everything. But the moratorium wasn't what we needed. We needed a pause on our mortgages until a resolution or a solution was found, should I say, because they were expecting us to pay for something that wasn't habitable, and it certainly wasn't our own fault. So it was very, very different to not being able to afford to pay our mortgage or not being in a position to pay our mortgage. We all absolutely, during that time, I know during the Celtic Tiger, everybody struggled, you know, and obviously with my business, even though we were okay, we didn't have as many customers coming in because everybody was struggling, and going out for dinner was a luxury, you know. And then for us to even with your moratorium, and I'm sure there were so many people in the same position as us, the bank will say, well, what's this payment on? You know, and you're going, oh God, we can't even go out for a night out when you so need it, you know. And look, I know there were lots of people, as I said, that genuinely do need a moratorium. We didn't need that. So they were trying to make us jump through loops and hoops and make everything as difficult for us as possible. And we'd been in the bank on a couple of occasions, but they'd allow us to make an appointment to see somebody, but they weren't interested as soon as we went in. There was a young and absolutely no disrespect to the bank staff that were looking after us, but they didn't have the first clue on how to deal with us. And also they didn't have any knowledge of our situation. They just could see that we wanted to stop paying our mortgage, but had no idea why. So, you know, you're going into town with that dreaded fear into the bank's office, which are very intimidating anyway. And you know that this is going to be a waste of journey, but you just have to keep plowing ahead and hope that maybe somebody will listen. But our problem was more the phone calls. We started to get phone calls, and they kind of, at first, and I think it was kind of a bullying tactic, they would ring both Fiachra and I, and it would be from different phone numbers and different departments. And then we started to get the post, and I have still the post. I have the post, and it's bundles. It's not just 20 letters, it is stacks of letters. And my mom has kept everything. So when we were moving around, she put everything into boxes, and it became, you were actually afraid to answer your phone, and you certainly wouldn't answer your phone from a private number or no number. There was no way, because you know that it was somebody on the end of the phone. Now, they were never rude. It was never anything like that. And these people were just doing their job. I was obviously a list, myself and Fiachra were obviously a list of numbers that these people have to ring every day. So there was never any rudeness or anything like that. And you just say, look, you know, we are trying to deal with this. It's a different scale, but they just didn't seem to understand it.
So even though they wanted to talk, they had people paid to talk, there was no listening. It was just...
There was no listening. They were just...
Show me the money.
Yeah, they just wanted the money, and they wanted us to keep on paying for a product that wasn't up to scratch.
Yeah.
And so that caused a lot of tension at home and a lot of stress at home between myself and Fiachra.
Was that hell at that time, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was absolutely hell, Greg. And even now I can feel the pit in my stomach. It was...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's just you're blaming each other, and we started to blame each other. And, and there was just so much upset. So it was at that stage that we decided, look, we're not dealing with them. We're not dealing with them. It probably wasn't the best thing to do. But for our mental health and for our sanity, we just had to stop listening to them.
Well, that's a survival mechanism, isn't it? So do you leave this hardship into your brain on a regular basis, answering every one of those calls?
Yeah.
Or do you do a little bit of self-preservation? I get the feeling from you that you're fairly robust and fairly strong, is good, solid. And Fiachra, the person that you pull pints with and everything else. But was he the same, do you think? But would you have said that?
I think he didn't deal with it the same way as me. He wanted it to all go away, but I knew it wasn't going to go away. I knew that this is not something that's just going to disappear. So we both reacted very, very differently. I decided, look, I'm going to have to make time in my life to get involved with the residents committee. I'm going to have to start becoming the campaigner. I've got my children. And I needed to leave Fiachra aside from that because I just knew that he wasn't coping very well. And there was nothing to tell me outwardly from him, apart from the stress that we were under. He didn't say to me that he wasn't coping very well. But I knew by leaving him aside to get on with his job and to focus on himself, I knew that I could do it. I knew that I could go and stand outside the Dáil every Wednesday with my children and with my other residents. And I knew that was fine and that it wouldn't affect me, that I could go home and forget about it. But I think with Fiachra, every time we went into court, we were getting nowhere. We'd go into court with the children to try and show the judge, look, we're not people who are doing anything wrong.
Yeah, we're not people taking advantage of the system, deliberately not paying stuff.
Absolutely. We've got our 2 children here and we are doing this for them. So he, as I said, he kind of stepped aside from it. He was still, I know it might sound a little bit old school, or, he found it very difficult that he wasn't able to provide a home for us. We wanted to hang up pictures in the temporary housing, which was provided by NAMA, and, to try and make it more homely. I was kind of like, yeah, let's just put those pictures up on the wall, and let's make this. They can deal with the holes in the walls, or else we can use that Tech 7 or whatever that we have to fill in the holes when we're leaving. I was of that opinion. Let's make the best of what we're at, where he was a little bit more concerned about not hanging up photos, and it just caused an awful lot of anxiety and tension between us. But we still laughed a lot, and we had Keris in the meantime. So Keris was brought home from the hospital to Priory Hall, but I'm looking back on some documentaries that were only out there over the last couple of weeks, but she was the baby in the carry seat. So we had a lot of other things to try and focus on as well, and a lot of happy times as well throughout it all. It wasn't all depression or anything like that. It was like we had lots of happy things. We had 2 children to focus on, which was the main thing.
Did you worry for him?
Not at the time, no.
Okay.
And now in hindsight is a wonderful thing, as we all know. And as you get older, you realise there were definitely red flags. Definitely at the time. He became a little bit withdrawn. He was a very, very social creature and was always the life and soul. And I know that sounds cliched about people who have passed by suicide. And I know it is cliched and say this, that he was the life and soul of the party. Fiachra was the life and soul of the party. He was a great musician. He was a great singer. He'd be the first one to get a big gang going together. And he really, really was. I think it is those people. It is true about those people that they're the ones that maybe suffer the most and can put on the brave face. And he did, and he put on the brave face. But as I said, Greg, now looking back, there was definitely red flags. And I was just way too caught up with 2 small children, no home, banks hounding me, and trying to keep down my full-time job as well at the time, that I just didn't notice.
And no wonder, you're full on, aren't you? As you say, even with the kids and everything.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult time.
Life was hectic.
Yeah. When did Fiachra wave goodbye to everyone?
15th of July.
Okay.
15th of July 2013. It was the 14th into the 15th. It was Sunday night into Monday morning. And he absolutely loved his job. He worked for a plumbing company. And we had plans, Greg. We'd booked to go away on a holiday 2 weeks later. He had paid his deposit to go on a trip around America with my dad for September.
Oh my God.
This was in July. And we'd also bought a new... when I look back, I always just think, this was not a decision that he made in the same mind. He had made plans for the following 6 months, things that he was really looking forward to. You know, he was going on a trip around America. We were bringing Keris down to south of Spain. We booked for 3 weeks. We were going on a big holiday. We've been chipping away, putting money away to try and save for that. We had lots of things to look forward to, and he was looking forward to them equally. He was really excited about doing the America trip. And there was the weekend on the Sunday, I had gone down to my parents. They were having a family barbecue and he didn't want to come. And I said, do you know what? Maybe he just needs a break from the kids. And because he was minding them all day on the Saturday when I was working. And I said, absolutely no problem. And when I came back up, he was very quiet. He was very quiet and he was very distant. But look, you know, what we were going through at the time, it was completely understandable. And put the children to bed. Then Oisín has always suffered with growing pains. Thankfully, not anymore. He's 16 now. But he always suffered very, very badly with growing pains, that you'd have a bottle of Calpol beside him in the bed, and usually he'd get into bed or else he'd have to massage his legs. So I ended up staying downstairs with him in his room. And I woke up the next day and went into Keris. And outside Keris's room was the main street. So you could see Fiachra's white van there, his work van. And so I went up the stairs with Oisín toddling up behind me, and the door was closed. So when I'm sure if you have children, Greg, I'm not too sure. The doors were always open though, that you could hear them, and that's how we lived. No bedroom doors were closed in case anybody was upset during the night. And Keris's room, as I said, was overlooking the road, and I saw his van. So I went up and the door was closed, and I just had this gut feeling. A very strange feeling, just something came over me, and I told Oisín to go down to Keris. So I sent him straight back down the stairs, and I went in and I found Fiachra, and he'd hung himself, as is documented, you know. And it was really strange, even though I knew. I actually thought he was joking, not that he would ever joke about something like that. I don't know what I thought. I grabbed his face and I felt his face, and he was stone cold. He was stone cold. He didn't look like he was in pain or anything. His eyes, I can't remember whether his eyes were opened or closed. But I just backed out, ran down the stairs, got Oisín and Keris down to the kitchen. And I can't remember who I called. I think I called my dad first. I can't remember. I'm not too sure. I probably called emergency services first I said, I can't remember. It's an absolute blur, but I know that I called my dad, and my dad was out working. He worked for a courier company, and he was out in the Knoll in North County Dublin. I remember little things. I remember my dad saying to me, I'm in the Knoll. I'm coming straight away. I'm turning around right now. Stay on the phone if you want. Get the children into the kitchen. Just make sure they're dressed. And he said, go and get them coats. I remember all of that. I remember that. And I went and got the kids their coats, and then I brought them outside, and then I could hear the sirens. I was still in my pajamas, and a lady came, and she could see that I was very distressed. And I think she lived around the corner from me. This was very much temporary accommodation as well. This was Nama, so I only knew my immediate next door neighbour. And this lady came around with a blanket for me, because I must have gone into shock. I don't even to this day know who that lady is, and I would love to know who she is, you know, just to thank her, because she entertained the children on the road. So the fire brigade and the ambulance arrived, and that was the last time that we stayed in that house, and that was the last time that we saw Fiachra. The Sunday was the last time that we saw Fiachra alive, so which was absolutely devastating. It changed the whole path of my life.
How do you get past that, Stephanie? How does anyone get past that?
I don't think you get past it, Greg. I think you learn to live with it. I've so many questions. I'm still 10 years on. I've so many questions, but I know they're not going to be answered. So you learn to live with the fact that the answers that I have, that I want to pour out of me, I want him to answer me. I want him to tell me why, or was it a moment of madness where I just have to accept what I think it was. And I think it was a moment of madness. I think it was a flick of a switch. I think he just felt, or did he feel, that some people have asked me, did he feel that maybe by him doing this, that maybe we might get a result, that maybe, did he feel that we'd be better off, myself and the children, that people might react? Is that what he thought? I don't think he thought any of that. I think it was an absolute light switch moment. I think something happened. I think something happened in his brain that he just said, you know what? Whether he was planning it beforehand, I don't think so, because he was planning so much for the future. He was planning for that big trip away for my dad's 70th birthday, you know, and we'd only just gone, I think, during the week to pay the rest of the money off a suite of furniture that we were hoping that we'd bring to a new home, you know, and things just didn't add up for me. And they don't add up for anybody, to be quite honest with you. His family still have so many questions, and they will remain unanswered. And I think the hardest part for me is not getting any answers. But you have to push that aside, put it into the corner, and know that I'm not going to get any, and stop focusing on it.
Yeah, and how about the kids, Stephanie, and explaining that to them and them coping with it and getting their heads around it? I presume that's because they were very young, weren't they?
Yeah, it was really difficult, absolutely difficult. Oisín just had his dad on the Sunday, and then who put him to bed, and then on the Monday he was gone. It was really difficult, and we didn't know what to do. We've never dealt with anything like this. My mum and dad, the only thing that we've ever dealt with is my mum and dad had a brother, or had a boy before I was born, Andrew, who died from meningitis. And so that was their only experience of really personal death, and unexplained, and something that was completely out of your control, you know. And you don't get a grieving time, or you don't get time with people if they're dying from natural causes, or you don't get that time. It's just swiped away from you. And they had the experience of it. So my dad is the most incredible person. He took over. He absolutely took over my life. He brought me down to the social welfare office when I didn't want to go. He said, "You need to have money for the kids. You're not going to be able to work." You know, I'd never even had a public services card before. I'd worked since I was 14, and my dad was just. I don't even remember, but I know he did. Just took control of my life and directed everything from there. And it was kind of like a command center in my mom's house, you know. And so we stayed with them for a couple of weeks, and the children were just surrounded by so many people. Their cousins were there. We just told Oisín that his dad had died, and he didn't ask any questions. He was really spoiled at the time. I remember he got a new handheld Nintendo game from my sister, and he was just all about that. And, you know, whatever worked, it worked for us. And Keris was too small, too young to even miss him. And Oisín has been difficult. He was difficult, and he's great now. He's 16 now, and it was a gradual thing. We didn't tell him that how his dad had died, what I felt, and with also the counsellors that worked with Oisín, with Bernardo's, they felt that with him it would be a natural thing. It was like he didn't want to know. His brain wouldn't be able to process it. He was really happy at the time, you know. He was, and I didn't want to ruin that on him. Still, we went away on holidays. We went on that holiday. We decided, you know what, look, I needed the break. My mom and dad, my sister, they all came with us. We went down to the south of Spain, a total blur at the time, but I know the children needed to get away. And in hindsight, I'm delighted. It was the right thing for me to do as well, because there was so much publicity surrounding the case, and it was nice for me to be able to get away and just to gather my thoughts and figure out a plan, and how I was going to respond to everything, and what I wanted to do with what had happened to me.
And then the Stephanie warrior turns up. Did you know she was in you?
Um, I've never really had to deal with many problems. Growing up, I didn't have to, but I'm I'm a very strong person. I am a very strong person, and I think that comes from having very, very strong parents, and my two sisters and my brother as well. Were, as I said earlier on, we're a very, very tight family, and I knew what had happened to me was desperately wrong. And I knew that this shouldn't have happened. It was a tragedy. It was a tragedy that should never have happened. And so, with the couple of weeks that I had down in Spain, I had to take myself off for a couple of walks. I had to write a lot of things down and try and make a plan of what I wanted to do that also wouldn't take too much out of me. I couldn't do too much. I knew that God, I could end up absolutely sick myself. So, and my sole focus and the most important thing for me to do was to get up every day with my children. So I had to think about it, whether I had the strength to do it, whether my parents wanted me to do it, and also by Fiachra's family, who are very, very important to me, and absolutely distraught with the loss of their son, their brother. And I knew it was going to garner a lot of media attention. And I knew there was going to be some negative things. And I also knew that, not everybody would agree. People would look at us and say, oh, look at them, they're using this to their advantage. And yeah, but I knew that I could do it. Ultimately, I knew that I was the right person to do this. And I know there are probably other people who probably looked at me like I was mad at the time, and but it kind of kept me going as well through the first year.
Did you surprise yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, because I remember when we were back and forth a tiny bit on Twitter, I remember you being on Ryan Tuberty.
Yeah.
On the Late Late Show, and he was pushing you to name the bank, and I was screaming at the TV, and you could see it on social media. Everyone was saying it's KBC, it's KBC, it's KBC, and you couldn't because you were in the middle of all of that. How did that part of things resolve itself?
So with KBC, it was almost immediate. It was absolutely awful. The letter stopped. The phone call stopped. I did get a phone call. I think it was the Monday that Fiachra passed away. I did get phone calls that first week, and my dad took the phone. And my dad, absolutely, protecting his cubs, my dad went ballistic, and he got in touch with somebody in the bank, and he said, these people are only doing their job. He said, but you need to back off, and they did. They did. Now, subsequently, I did receive more letters throughout the year and the following year. Also, 2014, I also did get some letters that were sent in error, and I was just still on their file. And that kind of took what had taken nearly 4 years of us, doors slammed everywhere. Zero help from the government, from Fine Gael at the time, trying to talk to Phil Hogan. He looked at us, and on some occasions he spoke about us like we were like the dirt on his shoe. He had no interest, kept blaming court, but on a human level,
wasn't there.
Where was the humanity?
Yeah.
That I could never understand, and that really got me going. I'd rouse with politicians. There was politicians opening local pharmaceutical plants down by us, and we doorstopped them, and they just showed such lack of humanity and consideration and care. And yet these would be the same people that would knock on my door looking for my vote. And, you're kind of going, we need to draw a line here somewhere, and there needs to be a healthy balance. And there was nothing. Then we had councillors, all the local councillors around here from all of the parties were so supportive. And they came out for the candlelit vigils. They came out for marches, things that we never even wanted to do. I never thought that I'd be doing anything like that unless I was going to a march for somebody else. I never thought that I'd be leading a march for Priory Hall or whatever. I'm very much vocal in public and I would support anything that I think deserves support, but I never thought that I'd be looking for rallying people to come and help us. And it was very hurtful. It was very hurtful, and it still is very hurtful. And so it took 5 years of banging our heads against a brick wall. literally banging our heads against a brick wall. And at this time, at that stage, we had a very good legal team. We'd a group called New Beginnings, was David Hall, and they came and absolutely give us all the right direction, information. They were absolutely super. And again, everything pro bono. They just saw the injustice. And I couldn't understand why, if the average Joe Soap on the street could understand the injustice, why wasn't there somebody brave enough in Fine Gael to say, this is wrong. This is wrong. It is the biggest purchase of your life. We had absolutely nothing to come back on. Anybody who went down and saw the complex when we left could tell that there was serious problems there, and through no fault of our own. And I know, like I say that all the time, but it was none of our fault. And yet the government felt that we were worthless and that they had nothing to gain by showing any support for any of us in Priory Hall. And it's still, to this day, I am disgusted by it.
Yeah. So in a way, it never ends, does it?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Tell me, who is Stephanie today?
So I am still a mom. I've got now teenage boy, he's 16, Oisín, he's in transition year. And I have Keris, who's 10, and she is in 5th class in school. And they're absolutely super kids. They are brilliant. Now, Oisín is difficult. He's a teenager. He's had a rocky road. He has a rocky road. He's had a rocky road. He's had a couple of very tough years with questions, and and I'm very open. If he's got a question, he could ring me now and I go and pick him up from school. I drop anything to go and, answer any question that he has. And I think he'll have questions like me for the rest of his life. He's very smart. I hope he gets into politics, but then again, I don't. I'm on the fence. It's kind of one of the things that he's picked up in transition year, and he's like, I kind of like this, and going, oh, Oisín, you have to make so many bad decisions and difficult decisions, and there are obviously some great rewards if you are good.
What does he want to study, Stephanie?
This year is the year in transition year that he's kind of finding out what he would like to do. He is very creative when it comes to like metal work, mechanical, that's the kind of side. And Fiachra was brilliant at it. So he built a guitar from nothing. He was so crafty and absolutely brilliant. He was my mom and dad, and Keris, when she was a baby, my daddy was the fixer because he fixed everything. Everybody would be ringing him to go and fix everything. So Oisín, I think, will probably go down the same route. He is also he's brilliant at debate. He's a very confident kid and very articulate. And Keris is like me when I was 10, wants to be a pop star or an actress. She has a singing audition on Saturday for her dance group. So she's really excited about that. They're very good children. And so far I've come out quite unscathed. Like if I compare Oisín to his peers, to other 16-year-olds, I think he's doing okay, and I probably did look into it a lot when he was having a couple of difficult years. I probably focused a little bit more on trying to help him through it, and to talk about everything and to make sure that I was there for him. But he's surrounded by super adults, and he's going to be okay. He's going to be a really good adult, and Keris will just be a very happy, well-rounded young girl. She's lovely.
And there's a fella in your life, isn't there?
There is a fella in my life. I've been very, very lucky, and I've known Richie a long, long time. He was my brother's friend, and he's a bit of a toy boy. There's 5 years in the difference. So there's 6 years between myself and my brother. And he lost his dad at the same time as Fiachra. There was only a couple of months in between them, and he was grieving as well. And when I moved into my new house, my dad had said to Richie, go down and sort out locks and everything in that house and everything. And we became really good pals. And this is where we are. Yeah.
Fantastic.
We married in 2016.
That must have been a difficult situation as well for him to step into and for you to embrace someone new.
Yeah,
with all of that,
Yeah, and you know what? It was very difficult as well because I don't only have my family, I also have Fiachra's family as well, who are very much involved in my life. So it was a very difficult time but a happy time at the same time. You know, it was like, oh my God, I can move on from this, you know, and there is somebody who wants to come in and take on two kids that could easily be very damaged from their experience, you know, and he knew that what he was taking on with Oisín was this young boy who had lost his dad, idolized his dad, and wouldn't take it too lightly if Richie is trying to discipline him or anything like that. And he's stepped up to the plate, and he has been absolutely wonderful. He's a great guy.
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it?
It is complicated.
But life is complicated.
And my life has been very complicated for the past 10 years. So for this is a walk in the park for me. And it's nice to walk in the park,
yeah.
somebody's hand.
And did you need a bit of help along the way? Did you need counselling just to keep you safe and robust and all that kind of stuff?
I've done a little bit of counselling, Greg, but I talk an awful lot, and I talk to everyone. And if I'm having a down day, I talk to my mom or my dad or Richie, and I don't bottle things up. You know, I've seen what happens with that, and you know, I have had down days, and they're few and far between now, 10 years on, but definitely for the first 6 years, I'd say there were times when I kind of went, oh my God, what the hell has gone on here? You know, and I still do look back and say, how the hell did I get through that? Because if I was looking at somebody else going through that, I would be concerned about them. And but I really just, you know, you just pull on your big girl pants and you get on with things. And I've got so many super things that have happened in my life. And I do focus on the positive things. And my sisters always say that about me. You're the most positive person I've ever met. And I say, well, you know what, look, I can't get up in the morning and have negative thoughts. I have to get up and make sure that my kids get out to school. I still run a restaurant, a very busy restaurant as well. So
What's it called?
Scotch Bonnet. It's the Scotch Bonnet in Malahide, and it's a super place. And I'm also working with a lot of my friends who knew Fiachra. We kind of call it the retirement village. So a lot of us who started all working together out in Howth are now out in Scotch Bonnet in Malahide.
What's the best dish in that menu?
Our ribs. So we do slow cooked ribs. They're for hours, and they are if we run out of ribs, we run out of them. There's no quick microwave fixie job or anything like that. They're cooked for 8 hours, and they are absolutely unbelievable. But we've got a very, very varied menu, and being called Scotch Bonnet, obviously it's named after a chili pepper, so lots of spicy dishes. But I'm with a lot of my older friends who would have been very friendly with Fiachra. We're all working together out there. And so I've got a great support network.
Yeah, fantastic. You're on the Win Happy podcast. So I need to ask you a few little questions, if that's okay.
Lovely, yeah.
What's happiness to you?
Happiness to me. Happiness is just getting up each day and knowing I have a roof over my head. I can get my children out to school. I can put a meal in front of them. I can live. Happiness for me is just all about living and trying to put the best foot forward.
Cool. And when I talk about winning happy, you know, for me, that's about chiseling out a life for yourself that has you making choices as you go along to realizing who you are, things that you're passionate about. You're talking about Oisín there, making all of those choices at such an early stage, which is kind of wonderful. And you know, the whole world is in front of him, and that's really cool. And I kind of use this analogy that you might love playing football, but without goalposts, it might get a bit boring after a while. So for you, what are your goalposts, and what are those moments where you put the ball in the back of the net, those kind of like, yes. So what's winning happy for you?
The best thing was when we went in, and for me, in my entire life, apart from the birth of my children, which is so cliched, but I have to say that, but was when we got to go into the Dáil and met Enda Kenny, and we knew that we can finally close the door on that part of our lives. And you know, Greg, it wasn't even for me, because I knew that I had a very, very long road ahead of me, but it was for the other campaigners and the other residents that had stood beside me in every type of weather, being Ireland, of course. And I knew that I could help them move on with their lives. And to me, I'd do it all again. I would absolutely do it all again. And so for me, I think that has been the most pinnacle moment in my life. So that makes me I feel proud. I feel proud that I did that. I don't think I've said that before, but I do.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah, I don't think I've said that. I am proud of what I've achieved.
And would you leave all of that kind of campaigning stuff behind? Do you happy in your restaurant? Is that done? Or is there that, you, you mentioned Oisin and politics. I'm just thinking, I know someone who's a bit of a force of nature.
Look, I definitely wouldn't say I've closed the door on that. And, God, the Micah crisis up in Donegal is very hard hitting for me. And I know I can only just share things for them on Twitter. I've given a couple of people advice, that have contacted me. And to me, the fact that that is still happening won't allow me close the door on politics, and it won't allow me close the door on trying to fight for justice and what's right. It's still very, very shocking to me, Greg, that with self-certification, nothing has very much changed since 2014, and how trust can be put in the people who are going to benefit the most or profit the most from cutting corners, as in builders, is just astonishing still to me. And there hasn't been enough done. And so I do feel that until enough is done, I will still be quite vocal about it. And I know there's people working away in the background. I know that Owen O'Brien, who is absolutely brilliant, he's pushing for more robust measures on planning. And I think until that is done, then I can definitely say I would never say I'd close the door on politics. I just couldn't. I just couldn't, because I know what those people are going through. And it really, really annoys me that, as I said, the people that profit the most by cutting the most corners are getting away with it still.
And it's in every walk of life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is in every walk of life. I don't only mean that in, as you said, it's in every walk of life. I don't only mean that in construction. It is in every walk of life.
There's a shyster everywhere, unfortunately, Stephanie.
But if there are rules and if there's enforcements in place, then those shysters, as you call them, they'll back away. Now, I know they probably will find another way, but we need to make it difficult for people to do this, because, it is ultimately me, you, my neighbours who are affected by it. It's not the people in government who are affected by it. They're not going to be the people who are going to be buying mica damaged houses. They know. And it's just how things are just brushed under the carpet and left to go on for years. And I do know that another man has passed by suicide in Mayo only in the last couple of weeks, who, under the pressure from his house and mica. So it is still happening, and we mightn't hear about it all the time. I do. I hear about it all the time, because I'm always looking for that all the time. And I think if there's anything now that I can do in the future is to make sure and keep banging the doors and keep knocking on those windows, and hopefully there will be something put in place that will protect us.
And Stephanie, for that person who is under that vice grip pressure coming from all sides, and I know you're not a counsellor or anything, but would you give them some advice? Would you have advice for anyone in that situation?
Absolutely, I do. And as I said, I have spoken to some people. I'm not a counsellor. The only experience that I have is my life experience, and my life experience has been through the loss of somebody, through to what I firmly believe was the pressure of the housing crisis, the pressure that we were put under. I think, as I spoke earlier on, Greg, about bottling things up. You need to talk. It's a house. I know it's their homes. I know that they think this is the end of it. It's not. Keep fighting, but talk to people and realize that you're not on your own, because I had such a great support from the residents committee. Everybody else is going through the same thing, and just keep shouting, because as soon as you stop talking, you're forgotten about. As soon as you stop shouting, you're forgotten about. They have to keep campaigning, and do also take a couple of minutes and some quiet time to yourself and to focus on something else. Go for the walks, read the book, stop putting things off. And it's a dreadful situation for them. It really, really is. It's an old saying, like if you bought a pair of shoes and you wanted to bring them back, you're not going to say, look, I'll only bring one shoe back, or I'll accept 60% of the cost, even though I haven't even put them on me and they're broken.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, and for the biggest purchase of your life, to think that you've little comeback on it, that needs to be changed. It absolutely needs to be changed. And I hope that it will be. And I hope that those poor people in Donegal and surrounding counties, because it's not only Donegal now, it seems to be all over the west and up the north, that they get 100% redress. And I know it'll cost the taxpayer. I know it'll cost people, you and I, but you know what, they're taxpayers too. And I would rather my money, my tax went to those people and remedying and giving them a safe home to live in.
Yeah, and we're into that cycle again where everyone needs houses and there's huge demand and they can charge whatever they want.
Yeah.
So if we're not careful, we're back there again and another generation. I have one last question for you.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. What was your best day?
My best day. Can I only pick one?
You give me what you want.
My best day. Probably when Oisín was born. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. He's a great kid. I'd have to say that was my best day. There was so much happiness around, and little did we know what was ahead of us. We lived in a lovely safe home which we were renting, and we were young and we felt that life was ahead of us. And yeah, I think it was probably Oisín.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, there's loads of living left in you, Stephanie, and Oisín and everything. So you're absolutely incredible. Honoured and privileged to have you chatting to me, and I hope we'll do it again soon. I must come up and sample those ribs.
Please do. I'd love you to come up if you're in Dublin. And Greg, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been really, really lovely. I do. I love to chat about what has happened to me, and if it even helps just one person, if one person hears that you can move on from things like this, and your life can start again, and it doesn't have to be all all that you can focus on. That I'm a very normal person from a very normal background, and I have a very normal life, but you can live and you can start to live again. And if even one person is listening that I help, that is worth millions to me.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you so much. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye. Thanks a million.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.